What is going on, everybody? And welcome to episode 51. I am your host, Marcus. And in this episode, we're talking about chasing that particular person and why it's not so much a good idea. A lot of different times you may be finding that there is that ideal person that you really, really want in your life. But the problem is you find that when you first meet somebody, you're excited, you want to spend as much time with them as possible. And a lot of times you start derailing yourself from specific things you are trying to achieve in your life. And you need to realize that by doing this, you start taking away from the relationship and realize that, a relationship is two-sided. A relationship uh, is like being able to leave someone and go about your life and come back with everything being intact, with everything being there, not having to worry about what the other person is doing. And knowing the other person has your back, knowing the other person uh, wants to be there without having you to be needy and having you to be consistently there, asking what's going on with her day, asking, making small conversation. I know can be extremely hard on a lot of different relationships. Some people may not want to have small conversation. Other people may really desire that small talk. When in fact, a lot of times, again, if you become this person that is so reliant on the other person, where does that leave yourself? And this is why it's important not to be chasing a specific person. Instead, what you need to be doing is not come across needy, is to essentially come to the point where, okay, well, I need to focus more on what I'm doing, what my plans are. And a lot of times people may not have this. They may not have an alternative. And so they soak all their time and their energy into this person, which could be a very bad thing because, like many different things I've talked about a lot of different, things in your life are temporary. Even relationships, it doesn't matter how close you are, how long you may have been together, uh, whatever the case is, you need to understand that things are always temporary, right? You do have an expiration. Things will expire at some point in your life. Being said, you need to focus on yourself. If you find, again, that you're spending too much time wondering what the other person is doing, yes, it's okay to think about the other person. I'm not saying you can't think about somebody else. Good majority of the time, you may think about somebody, and that's a good thing. That's a positive thing. You want to know how that person is doing, but ultimately understand, where to judge the line and what boundaries do you set for yourself, and not allowing yourself to become too essentially overindulged in that relationship that you're forgetting to live your own life. And a lot of times this requires auditing, because there are times when I talk about like seasons where you are on par, you're motivated, and you're just going out and attacking those things. You're trying to make a dent in the world. And then for whatever reason, you lose motivation in the thing that you're doing. And so you shift motivation to a relationship, to a specific person. And you realize that this pulls you further away from those things that you're trying to achieve. And also, it puts a lot of strain on the relationship because you are too reliant on a relationship. And you need to be mindful of this and know when to step back, and when to make decisions that possibly need to be made. And the biggest thing is relationships aren't easy. I've seen a lot of relationship coaches out there, and they talk about specific things. And for myself, I think a lot of it is you have to focus on yourself, and people don't want to focus on themselves. People, if you look deep down inside and you try to look at what's driving you and all that small talk you have with yourself about, how things aren't going to work out because I am this or I'm that, and I just don't deserve this person, and this and that. You have to realize that is, self-reflection on yourself about what you need to correct in yourself. And so you need time for yourself. If you don't have that time, right, you're going to realize that you're going to push things away that you particularly may not want to push away. and then realize down the line, well, man, I really shouldn't have pushed that person away. I really need to focus on myself, or maybe I'm becoming too reliant on that relationship that I'm forgetting to put the work in on myself. And again, this takes time to reflect on yourself and work on yourself. Do you love yourself? If you can't love yourself, how are you expecting somebody else to love you? That is one of the hardest things to deal with, and takes a lot of going back and dealing with your own personal demons that you have with yourself that you just keep running away from, and filling with other gaps, whether you're trying to go out and perhaps you're that person that parties all the time because you want to forget about what's actually going on, the current life you live. And so you essentially lash out, and maybe you have a relationship here and there, or maybe you have specific other things that you're putting your energy or effort in to forget about the current situations. And for myself, I've seen that in myself multiple times in different relationships where I've I didn't like what I was seeing, and so I tried to fill that gap with a relationship. And even that relationship wasn't something I really wanted, but it was more the fact that I was aiming towards trying to fill a void in myself because I didn't want to reflect on myself. I didn't want to look at myself for the choices that I've made on specific things. And this is saying that not everybody is perfect. You have to understand that. Not everybody's perfect, but effort to fixing yourself, whatever that may take. Maybe that takes going to therapy. Maybe that takes time to yourself to think, to get your head straight. That is important. Because a lot of times, it's easier to just fall into the next relationship, or fall and rely on some other substance, or whatever the case is, or perhaps trapped in and playing video games all day, or not going out and visiting people because of the fact that you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to deal with your inner self. And that takes time. And even for myself, I've done a lot of meditation. I continue to do meditation. I've continued to have to audit myself to see where I am, to see what I'm doing, and realize that I need to take a step back here and refocus on where my focus needs to be at. And again, a lot of times we don't want to do that. A lot of times we put an emphasis on a particular person, and then realize if that relationship ends, we are devastated, completely devastated, and we don't know where to start. And you're lost. You don't know who you are. Again, all leading up to the fact because you put everything into the relationship. And so now you don't know who you are. But the good thing about it is that we are constantly creating ourselves. And that you never really lost yourself because you were never really creating yourself, but your energy and effort were put into a relationship. And when that much energy and effort is put into a relationship, you start, almost demanding things. Like I've put everything I have into this relationship, right? This is where the heat of the passion and everything comes in a relationship, because you have given everything for this relationship. Your energy, your time, which are the two most valuable things each and every day, you give to this relationship, as opposed to working on yourself and having the relationship complement your life. And so understanding and distinguishing that is what really matters. And you can want to say, well, okay, well, if this person wants me to change, then I will just change. But that defeats the purpose. You shouldn't change to please somebody. Somebody should like you from the beginning of who you are. And so this goes back to that inner reflecting. That goes back to, well, if I don't like myself, I need to correct that. What do I need to do? Do I need to start going to the gym more? Do I need to start studying more? Do I need to create a business, write a book, start doing different investments, start getting involved with group activities that I want to do? That's what matters. You should be focusing on that stuff. And maybe the relationship you think you have right now is what you need, is not what you need. You need that time to yourself. And maybe you get in another different group, you enjoy that group, and so you find somebody else there that was a lot more complementary to the current relationship that you had. But you wouldn't know that. because you're not giving yourself the chance to work on yourself. And I know I say self first a lot because that is important. You have to work on yourself for other people to love you for who you are. Because some people can see it and you don't see it. And then you'll continue to essentially beat yourself up over it, and then just push it down the road because this person that you met is somebody that you really enjoy being around, but you can't live with yourself. And so if you continue to be in a relationship with someone like that, you realize that you're putting so much strain that the other person can start feeling it, and it opposes the other person to want to be with you. And so this is why self-reflecting and being with yourself and understanding who you are is tough. But there's a lot of people that don't want to do the work. Even myself, I've had to continually push myself to do the work. Doing work is hard. Nobody said it was easy. And you'll never be 100%. Don't ever think you're going to get to a point to where you're just like, yeah, I got it. And so now I'm able to start doing it. I'm saying in any relationship, just start focusing on yourself. Start working on yourself. If the relationship is meant to be, it will be. Don't put so much strain on the relationship. I know a lot of times, I talked about being alone, and a lot of times we fear being alone. Why do we fear being alone? Because we can't stand ourselves majority of the time. Majority of the time, we don't want to spend the time with our thoughts and our ideas. We'd rather have someone else there and fill that void with other different things that can entertain us and distract us from having that conversation that we need to have with ourselves, or having to put forth the effort in ourselves, the time, energy, and effort to start looking and seeing, well, what do I need to start fixing? Because a lot of times it's a deep-rooted problem that needs fixing. But we don't want to see that anymore. We'd much rather do something that's more fun and entertaining, and I get it. We all want to have a good time in life. There's sometimes you just need to reflect and fix. And I am very much the same case. I am continuously working. Sometimes I start slacking on stuff, and I realize that I am, and I go back and I start making an effort to pick it back up, to get it back to where it needs to be. Self-reflection is a big thing of that. Why you shouldn't let it go, 2, 3, 4 years down the road and you wonder who you are anymore. This is why I think a lot of relationships just fail. Because a lot of times we are so dependent on that other person. We become so dependent on that person and put such a strain on the relationship. The other person can feel it and the other person just doesn't want it. I wonder why relationships fall apart. And I've lived through this in, marriages that I've had because of that fact. You feel like the other person needs to be there to support you, but you have to realize that you have to have the desire to want to go out and do something, be ambitious with your life and wanting to do something with your life. If you're okay with the life that you live, then okay, find someone that matches that and wants that, whatever that is. Maybe you're okay with just living a plain life. There's nothing wrong with that. I would like a really simple life where I didn't have to worry about anything and I could just be who I wanted to be. I wake up when I wanted to, although I probably always wake up really early. That's just because of who I am. I feel like I can achieve more in the morning and have the rest of the day to myself to do other things. But we have to focus again on ourselves, because we'll take that when we distracted by, well, if I don't give enough effort, if I'm not constantly waiting hand and foot, and that's just the wrong thought, that's the wrong idea, that is just not going to help you. And it's sad to see, because I've seen it myself and I've seen it in other people. And so I'm making this podcast to evaluate your evaluate your situation. Yes, you should give time, and it's extremely important to have time for the relationship. I'm not saying live completely different lives and then just not spend time together. Time is needed. You need to have that bonding as well. That bonding is important. You can't just push someone off and not talk to them, for days or weeks on end and think that that person's just going to want to stick around. It's just not the way it works. But realize that if you want someone to be there, you do have to give some level of effort to know that you're thinking of them, to know that, to acknowledge that, hey, I appreciate you. But then also realize I appreciate you, but I'm also going to go do this thing over here. Sometimes people may take that the wrong way. But you have to realize the flags and realize what is there. Is that person so dependent upon you, or are they not? Maybe they're not. Maybe they just don't talk to you for days. You need to realize from that point that, you know what, maybe this relationship isn't for me. You need to know when to step away. You need to know where your borders are at. And if you are overextending your reach is a big one. Because if you're too overextended trying to make it happen, you feel like there's no level of effort coming from the other side, maybe you are the one that needs to start looking at it. Because a lot of times, again, we don't want to face our demons. A lot of times we bring down the wall and let that person in, that person sees us. And so now we're like, okay, well, I could just let everything go and I could just be myself. And a lot of times you find that to just even do that is a bit much. People get turned off even by that because people are dealing with their own things. People are living their own lives. And so being said, you need to live yours. The people that will be in your life will be in your life. You shouldn't have to put so much effort into it. But it's, again, a fine amount. If you enjoy being around each other, enjoy being around each other. Or just don't. But know your boundaries and say something if someone's overextending, or say something if you feel like you're not getting enough. I think that is important. Everybody wants to talk about communication, how important communication is. Sometimes when you communicate, you can also over communicate, or sometimes you can under communicate. So there's always a finite line how much you should communicate. Again, if there's no communication, you need to reevaluate that relationship. Maybe that person just doesn't want to let you down. Maybe that person just doesn't see it working out. Then so be it. The point is you shouldn't get to a point so where if that person leaves, that you are so devastated that you can't continue your normal everyday process, your routines. You shouldn't be so reliant like that. Yes, it's going to be painful. I'm not saying it's not going to be painful, but you shouldn't put it to where you're just sitting in bed and you're going to be completely devastated and rocked. Yes, I think you should put yourself out there. I think if you're really truly in a relationship, you should be very open about it. And you're going to be vulnerable. There's just something that's going to happen. But you have to have the perspective that it could end, and it will end at some point eventually. And if they are meant to be in your life, they will be in your life. Either that or you walk. These are my boundaries. If you don't respect my boundaries, I'm just not going to stay around anymore and stick to them. because that's what matters. That's what's going to continue to allow you to progress to where you want to go. And a lot of times it's hard too, because, you know, whenever you're in a relationship, a lot of different times you can see, somebody may have success in where you want to be successful, or, you think, well, hey, I'm the guy, so I should be very successful. Because I've always felt like it's the guy's burden to be successful. But nowadays it's changing. How do you feel in that position? Do you feel jealous of the other person? A lot of times, I think just naturally we do, when we see someone else succeed and we can't get it. And so we beat ourselves up even more for it. And it's constantly just looking and reevaluating on your thought process, on what you're doing. And sometimes you do need to step away just to clear your head, come back at it with a new approach. Again, not comparing is always big, and I see why people always want to know on how to stop comparing. Comparing is just practice, and when you have those thoughts and ideas in your head, that you try to change the thought process, and if you keep doing it over and over and over, it becomes easier. It doesn't just go away, it becomes easier. Everything becomes a little bit easier if you give it more time and effort on your behalf. And so, yes, it does matter where your time and energy goes. If you don't have boundaries established, people would take advantage of those boundaries. And so we find ourselves in relationships we don't want to be in, but a lot of times we don't want to put forth the effort to change things. But yet, we don't like where we're at, and whatever that entails. Because outside of that, at least we know what we have in that particular situation. Where if we change things, we don't really know what we're getting. And the uncertainty is what draws us away from making change. Well, I can deal with, even though this is bad, I can deal with this because I know what to expect. But if I change it to this way, I'm not really going to know what I'm going to get from it. It could be better, it could not be better. I don't really know. And this is where I talk about, taking risk in your life and realizing that there's an abundance of people in the world. And realize that, again, you need to spend the time on yourself. You need to love yourself before you start introducing people into your life to say, hey, I want you to be part of my life. I want to be partners. I want to go crush the world. I want to do all these things. Can you do it with me? It's not saying they have to have your same energy and drive that you do. But yes, they should be there to support you. They should be there to want to have conversations with you, big or small. And think that even whatever conversation you're having, even if it's a small conversation about your day, the other person, if they care, they appreciate this a small conversation. Does it need to happen all the time? No. But even just a small, hey, how are you doing? Right? Those things matter. If you want that person in your life, well, you should probably do something like that so they're aware. But never chase somebody. Again, if your apples are too much involved, too much in one basket, and you expose yourself, you realize that you're putting a lot of yourself into this thing. And if it doesn't work out, I don't know what I'm going to do. Don't ever put yourself in that situation. That's why it's important to be building something outside of a relationship. Whether that's a hobby that you thoroughly enjoy, whether that's a book, right? These things matter. These things help you shift focus off of a relationship. Yes, the relationship is extremely important, but I am building something for myself, to build my self-esteem, to build my confidence, to perhaps bringing some more money for myself. A lot of different things, a lot of psychological things that are going to help me feel more uh, dominant and more capable and confident just in my life and the way I attack the world, which is an attractive thing. But if you can't do that, and you're again focusing so much energy on this relationship and what that person thinks and what they're doing, the relationship will suffer from that. And you play this back and forth. This is where boundaries come in. Either you're with me or you're not with me anymore. You have to let me know. Or I will just make the decision and I will leave. But you have the power to do that. You have the power to try to understand it, to try to communicate that if that is the person you want in your life. And if it's an issue to talk about it, then you have your answer. So go out there, spend the time on yourself, correct the things that you need to correct, and live your life. And if the person is right, they'll be there right beside you, supporting you no matter what.